Välkommen allesammans! I just released a video that was a bit more popular than average. Should Norse paganism be for Scandinavians only, or people with Germanic ancestry only? So, just a different perspective in that video. You can go watch that if you want, but we saw some questions about people who don't have Scandinavian ancestry, but they have Germanic ancestry. Maybe they're Dutch, or German, or English, or Gothic, or any of these places that the Germanic tribes migrated to in large numbers. So the question was, how do we practice Norse or Germanic paganism in the way that is most accurate that our ancestors practiced, if you have ancestry? Good question. And interestingly enough, Jackson Crawford just posted a video too about the Proto-Germanic names for the gods that ties in perfectly with this subject, and I'll speak about that in just a minute. So, all of the Germanic tribes, all of the Germanic peoples, the language and religion was in the same family. If we go back far enough in time, we were all one people. Exact same language and religion in the original homelands, which was in Scandinavia and northern Germany area, like you can see in this map here, about 2,000 years ago or before. So all of us really, all of us Indo-European people were also the same at one point too, but for that we have to go back 6, 7, 8,000 years. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just sticking to the Germanic heritage here. So as time went on, and many of us migrated out to other places, we start to see some differences. This is the famous migration period that you always hear of, starting in the 300s. The differences are mainly in the language, culture and artwork. That's at least the types of things that we have proof started to get different. But the religion was still the same. Same beliefs, same myths, same holidays, same gods. And yes, no matter where you come from, the gods and the myths would be the exact same ones as the Norse myths. It's just that the god names might have been different. You can see in this chart here some examples. So the myths that we all know of from the Norse, we all know those, but it's just the Norse myths, and they're the only ones that we still have detailed, preserved texts about it, and that's the Poetic and Prose Edda. Both preserved in Iceland. In your country, I'm sure you also had lots of written text too about these myths, but they were destroyed by you-know-who, as always. So yes, of course, you can read the Norse myths in the Poetic and Prose Edda, no matter where you come from, but I would maybe recommend changing the gods' names according to what fits your ancestry best, just because those names of the gods will resonate with you more and bring up memories in your DNA or past lives, whatever you want to believe about that. So I'm Norwegian, so me and other Scandinavians are really the only ones who have ever called our gods by the popular names Thor and Odin, like you see here. But if you're German or Dutch or English, you might be calling your gods by these names here. Or even if you have some French or Gothic ancestry, which most people do in Europe, by the way, then you might be calling them by these names. So yes, the same religion and myths, just different names that might resonate with you more. I will say one thing though, the practice of the religion would have been a little different in these different places too. We don't have much evidence about this though. From the Norse, this is what we're lucky enough to have the most evidence. We have a lot of texts that can tell us about pagan practice in Scandinavia and Iceland. For Anglo-Saxon paganism, for example, we definitely don't have a lot of evidence, but we have some evidence that shows paganism was practiced in Germany or England slightly different than in Scandinavia. So there are some great people reconstructing Saxon paganism and different types based on this evidence. I could recommend Robert Sass if you're English or German. You can check his channel out. What he's doing is basically recreating these things in the way that would be most likely practiced by the Saxons. So if you have, German or English or Dutch somewhere around there, that he would be a good source. For other Germanic peoples, we have pretty much no evidence of how the religion was practiced there. So unless you can find some evidence that paganism was practiced, slightly different in your homeland, then yeah, of course, read the Norse myths, read the Norse sagas. You can watch my channel or any other channels that talk about historically accurate practices of the Norse. it's reasonable to assume that your ancestors had the exact same practices as the Scandinavians did, unless, you know, some evidence comes up to prove otherwise. For example, things like in Scandinavia, we find a lot of ship burials. So, of course, for me, a Norwegian, we're a seafaring people. That's how I'll want to be buried when I die. That's how I would be practicing that religion. If your ancestors come from the landlocked forests of Germany, for example, probably no ship burial for you. Those kinds of things, you can do your own research and do whatever practices might resonate best with you and your own history. But yeah, the myths, of course, are all the same, no matter where in the Germanic regions you come from. And one last thing I'm going to speak about here, about Jackson Crawford's video. If we go back far enough, we were all one people anyway, and we were speaking a language called Proto-Germanic, and we were calling our gods, instead of Thor and Odin, we'd be calling them Thunras and Vodanas. Super cool language, I know, and this is the language that we were all speaking. All these other languages that you see here, used by the Germanic tribes, they may have lasted a couple hundred years before they evolved and changed into something else. But Proto-Germanic, that lasted 1,000 years, probably even longer, in my opinion. The problem is, we have almost no texts of this language, so we really don't know what it looks like, and that means it's reconstructed. And this is exactly what Jackson Crawford has done in this video. All of the central gods, he has reconstructed their names into the Proto-Germanic language, so go check that video out. And me too, I even like to use these gods' names as much as I can, because these would be what all of our people originally called their gods, and the language that we all used for the longest out of all of these others. And, you know, if you watch any of my other videos, you know that the main point, one of the biggest parts about paganism, is about awakening memories of past lives. So speaking a language like this is going to be best for that. So I would recommend that, but of course you can all, you know, research your own history and come up with whatever ideas and things you have and reconstruct the religion in your own way. But of course you can always learn from the Norse and any other sources that we have. So that's it for today. Vi ses nästa gång.